The iPad lived up to the hype in its debut weekend. Broadpoint AmTech analyst Brian Marshall says the company likely sold 525,000 units this weekend, cementing his view that Apple is the best technology company on the planet. Now, according to Bloomberg data, Brian is one of the most accurate forecasters of the stock, and he joins us now from our bureau in San Francisco. Brian, thanks for joining us on Inside Track this morning. You have an estimate of 525,000. Gene Munster of Piper Jaffray says 700,000. There's a pretty big disparity there. How did you come up with your number?
Well, I hope he's right. I came up with my number through basically my channel checks and component build data points. But at the end of the day, I think roughly 250,000 units were ordered pre-order. That's online through Apple online store. About an additional 250,000 or so of retail stores on Saturday and Sunday, and then finally about 50,000 units through Best Buy's channels as well. So our number is 525,000 units for the entire weekend.
Now, we saw footage of the stores. They appear to not run out of the devices, even though some stores may have sold out of it. That's a change with the launch of the iPhone, for instance. Does that say anything to you about the fact that Apple had plenty of devices on hand to fill the demand? Were they overestimating, underestimating the demand?
No, I think actually what it signifies is that Apple is becoming more mature in its technology product launches. And so I think that just due to the fact that we couldn't find that many stores that were actually sold out across the board. I mean, clearly the 16 gig and the 32 gig models were more popular than the 64 gigabyte models. But I think Apple is becoming more efficient with its channel partners. They're actually building enough supply to put into the channel prior to launch. And so we actually think that that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Now, speaking of partners, a lot of people were surprised that Apple chose to stay with AT&T for the launch of this iPad device. What's your take on this partnership? Will it last?
Yeah, I think from an exclusivity perspective of the iPhone, that's something I would expect to expire at the end of this year. It's my intention or my belief that Verizon actually comes on board in calendar year 2011 with the iPhone. With the iPad wireless connectivity from a 3G perspective, clearly AT&T does have near-term exclusivity in the U.S. We think that won't remain in place for that much longer, and clearly international carriers are going to be coming to offer the iPad here pretty shortly as well. So we think exclusivity is kind of a thing of the past for the most part, and don't expect to hear too much about that in the future with regards to Apple's carrier partners.
Okay, let's talk about Google, because on the one hand, it's a rival to Apple with its own products, but it's also a partner here with the iPad. The Google search bar is already permanently in the Apple iPad device. How does Google stand to benefit or get hurt from the iPad's launch?
Yeah, sure. I think it's interesting because they seem to be on sort of parallel paths from a competitive perspective. They do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, Apple wants to offer its customers best-in-breed technology. And clearly, Google's search engine, as well as YouTube, are best-in-breed applications for their customer base. And so that's who they elected to go with. It's going to be interesting to see if that remains in place down the road. But I'm not expecting any near-term changes. But clearly the two companies are increasingly becoming more competitive, and that's something that we don't expect to change anytime soon.
Okay, Brian, finally, very quickly here, Apple's share price, how high could it go? It's already the heaviest weighted stock in the NASDAQ, the third most influential in the S&P 500, trading at about 237 this morning. Where will it end up?
Yeah, our current price target is $280, and we think that's conservative. I wouldn't be surprised to see Apple get to $300 later this year, and it has the potential to become the world's largest technology company from a market cap perspective, potentially exceeding that of Microsoft.
All right, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Brian Marshall of Broadpoint AmTech.